This chapter today is kind of a big one. Jaime 5
Banger.
of A Storm of Swords. So Jaime and Brienne are in the bathhouse in Harrenhal, washing themselves before meeting Roose Bolton. Jaime feels dizzy in the hot bath and begins to tell Brienne his story despite his own misgivings about revealing the tale. Jaime says Aerys would have bathed in wildfire if he dared. The Targaryens were all mad for fire. After the Battle of the Bells, Aerys realized that Robert Baratheon was no mere outlaw and that the Targaryens faced their greatest threat since the Blackfire Pretenders. He began to disperse his Kingsguard to take command of the army, recalled Rhaegar from the south, and sent letters to Casterly Rock. But when Tywin never responded, Aerys commanded his pyromancers to place caches of wildfire throughout King's Landing. Lord Chesteld, the current hand, found out what was going on and tried to stop Aerys from continuing his bad course, but Aerys had him killed and named the pyromancer Rosart, the man who had burned Rickard Stark alive, his hand. All this time, Jaime remained in the throne room guarding the king and his secrets. After the Trident, Aerys sent his wife and Prince Viserys to Dragonstone, but kept Elia and her children in the Red Keep because he thought that Prince Lewin Martell had betrayed Rhaegar during the battle, and thus needed Elia and the children as hostages to ensure Dorne's loyalty. With wildfire in place, Aerys told Rosart, "The traitors want my city, but I'll give them naught but ashes. Let Robert be king over charred bones and cooked meat." Aerys may have thought that the great fire would kill everyone, but transformed him into a dragon, much as Aryan Brightflame had thought. When the Lannisters appeared before King's Landing, Varys advised them to keep the gates closed, but at the advice of Pycelle, Aerys led in the Lannisters, who proceeded to sack King's Landing. Jaime felt he had to act after the Mad King commanded him to bring his father's head. He killed Rosart, then returned to the throne room and killed King Aerys. Days later, he hunted down and killed the remaining two of Aerys' pyromancers, Gargius and Bellis, so that their secrets would die with them. When Brienne asks why nobody else knows this tale, Jaime tells her that the Kingsguard are sworn to protect the king's secrets and that Eddard would have never believed his tale. Jaime then nearly passes out from the heat, and Brienne calls out for Qyburn. When they are brought before Roose Bolton, who tells them he chose to wed Walder Frey because Lord Walder Frey offered him his bride's weight in silver. When Brienne inquires after Arya, Bolton mysteriously states that she was lost for a time, but she has been found and is to be returned safely to the north. Bolton tells them he is awarded Harrenhal to Vargo Hoat because the goat was a stranger to the Seven Kingdoms and did not know the prize was poison. He means to curse the Lord to curse he means the curse of Lord Tywin, for Hoat was not aware of what Tywin does to traitors such as Tarbex and the Rains. Bolton explains that he has a small problem because the goat wishes to return Jaime to Rickard Karstark to claim the Lord's reward for his daughter's hand in marriage. Vargo had Jaime's hand chopped off and sent to a grisly lord as a grisly token to Lord Tywin, feeling he would be well safe in Carhold. What he doesn't know is Robb has beheaded Lord Karstark, and the goat is now doomed. But since Vargo is in Bolton's employ, Tywin might feel that Bolton was responsible for maiming as well. Jaime agrees to carry word to his father, absolving Bolton of all his blame. But as for Brienne, Bolton tells her it would be unconscionable for me to deprive Lord Vargo of both of his prizes. So a ton of stuff happens
A lot.
in this episode in today's episode, in this chapter. So Jimmy, I think we'll kind of have to just do like big major takeaways, big points for this whole chapter today. So do we want to start with, I think we'll just start at the beginning, right, which is Jaime's realization, which I think is one of the best moments in the books. It's one of the best thing. I mean, Jaime is one of the reasons I love A Storm of Swords so much, because it's the first time we get that sort of other side of the coin thing, and you begin to see, well, okay, maybe Jaime isn't as terrible of a person as we thought. Keep in mind, right? This is the why I love the reread segment that we always say when you're going chapter by chapter. We just listened in last week in Davos. Stannis Baratheon talked about the toughest decision he ever had to make was, do I stay loyal to my king, or do I go with my brother? Do I go with my blood? It's the same decision Jaime Lannister has to make.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right here. And it's just something, an interesting parallel between the two.
And let's be honest, Stannis is not a favorable character You could even say he's possibly an antagonist at some point. Jaime has been an antagonist up until this point of Storm of Swords, right?
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that makes them so complex, in my opinion, is that I would say that they did the right thing. Both of them did the right thing, but they neither were ever thanked for it.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think Robert Baratheon ever said, Stannis, my brother, I love you so much. Thank you, man. Absolutely not. Does Tywin treat Jaime with any like, hey, thanks for not cutting my head off?
Yeah.
No, none.
Stannis even says that. Well, the funny thing is that Robert then gives Stannis Dragonstone, which Stannis takes as a slight.
As a slight, yeah, because Stannis
Which
is
is
a bit petty. Yeah.
right, because Stannis is like, yeah, in some degree with that. I know it's we're talking about Jaime here, but it's all kind of together. Do you think it was? Do you like? Because I think the way Stannis kind of phrases it is that Storm's End should be the new Dragonstone.
Yes.
Do you think Stannis is right in that, or should it still be Dragonstone? I kind of think Stannis is right in that. Robert should have turned Storm's End into the new Dragonstone.
There might have been a logistical reason for that, like positioning.
Just because it does kind of keep them safe as they're kind of
and also
over there.
There's possible like things underground at Dragonstone we haven't got to yet. I mean, like he might have been savvy to some of that stuff. I'm not sure.
In theory, Joffrey, if Robert hadn't died and Joffrey wasn't like a terrible whatever, Joffrey would have been moved to Dragonstone when he came of age. And then Stannis would have I don't know where Stannis would have went because Renly had Storm's End.
Well, maybe that's what Stannis was thinking.
Yeah.
Stannis was saying, oh, he's putting me here to make it look good and then he's going to get rid of me. Who knows?
Yeah.
So my big thing is that they're complex characters, and for the good decisions they do make, they actually kind of get burned for them in some way. I mean, Stannis a little less so than Jaime, because Jaime in this chapter provides what I think is a pretty good indictment of Eddard Stark and his attitude towards honor and nobility and morality in Westeros. And he's saying, Eddard Stark would have never believed me, because Eddard was so blinded by the fact that the Lannisters had done bad things that he couldn't imagine Jaime doing any. Like, he truly believed he knew Jaime, but I don't think he did. And I don't think we knew Jaime until this book, right, where we start getting perspective. And that's why I said this is the turning point of the redemption arc. I mean, we almost have like a confession of sorts from him, talking about the hardest point ever in his entire life. And then at the end, he pathetically passes out from heat in a tub. He's very sympathetic in this moment. That was on purpose. George wanted you to feel sympathy for him at the end, and Brienne comes to to save him. And in many ways, you could argue that this trip with Brienne is what will save Jaime and will lead to his redemption, possibly. I still think that we're going to get a very circular arc that isn't that off from what the show was, in my opinion. Who knows? I don't know that for a fact. I could also see him doing Valonqar and killing Sir. I could see all the aspects of it. But regardless, very important to build sympathy for the character, and he does so while giving us a new perspective on past events that we had already heard about through the eyes of someone else, and then passing out at the end in a very almost like sad and pathetic way because of his current status, like losing his hand in infection and all these things. So just a masterful job. And makes Jaime so much better of a character. It's so good.
Yeah, agreed. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like you said, there is a parallel between those two, right? Passing out, but in both ways, and now he's passing it in Brienne's arms too, right? And it's almost as if he is also having he is having a transformation, right? Now he has the gold hand and everything. And finally sharing like that secret with someone and talking about it, like, because I don't think it's ever said anywhere if he has had this full conversation with Cersei. You'd have to imagine that he probably would, but maybe he didn't, and maybe Bran is the first person he's telling.
And do you think Cersei would care?
No, probably not.
She would not care. No, not at all.
Yeah, which is crazy and wild. But yeah, I mean, this does sort of set up another kind of thing about like, hey, theory, is there still all that wildfire there? Is there still wildfire caches all over the place? Yeah.
A lot of wildfire set up. And also remember, Jaime has dreams about wildfire at some point and others burning. So what I want to propose to you, Matt, is I know we have the Seth the Baelor scene, which actually is an amazing scene in the show. It's set up very well. It's pretty tremendous. And there are breadcrumbs here to lead us to believe that wildfire is probably going to be used again. And there's a stash of it in King's Landing in the Dragon Pit. However, my opinion, Matt, is that this is going to play out in the final battle with the others for the long
Exactly.
night. And my biggest reason is the long night is not just going to happen at Winterfell like it did in the show. That happened logistically because of budget. They only shot at one location, right? They couldn't shoot that over and over and over
Well, yeah, it was
again.
like they filmed for like 50 days or something. It's like the biggest battle ever.
It's one of the bigger misses of the show, just in but I understand like the need to do it in one look. I get it, but this is the beauty of books, is that we don't have to worry about a budget, right? So if the others don't show up on King's Landing's doorstep, there's all this like ignoring the existential threat for petty human squabbles, which George is getting at the entire time through the story, would be for naught. And I just don't think that that's how this happens. I think that the final battle actually does happen in King's Landing with the others. So I think that the Wildfire Cache most likely will come into play in the final battle and not the Sept of Baelor.
Yeah. I thought we've talked about that too. Because I've still always loved the idea that Dany dies in the final battle, like saving Westeros.
I
And
agree. Yeah.
she doesn't actually sit the Iron Throne or any of that stuff. Is that her whole purpose is that she's ultimately then loved because she makes the decision to sort of like sacrifice herself or something. And Wildfire certainly could be part of that. And essentially, you just blow up King's Landing, which would also be sort of, in a way, you could then kind of go to a route of like
propaganda.
Well, is that it does end up going to like a democracy type thing, which is the way the show went, which I like. Maybe you have a king brand, but they're chosen or something like that. Because I feel like the feudal system is still something that is challenged, and that's a big part of breaking the wheel and all.
Oh yeah, George
things.
is criticizing it. Yeah,
and Dany certainly could be the one to break the wheel and the
Mm-hmm.
cycle of all of that stuff if she is the one who destroys King's Landing, and then King's Landing's gone, and then it kind of goes back.
Yeah, I like this a lot. I mean, I think also like there's a lot to be said about like the history and the Targaryen name and the bloodline, and maybe that can't exist for them to move on. Like maybe that has to be gone. Jon still exists, so that brings up a wedge issue that people could platform off of for the Targaryens. But I don't know. I'm not sure exactly how I get there, but I do get the vibes that Wildfire is being hinted at here very purposefully, and that it most likely will come into play much later in the story and not just at the Sept of Baelor. But who knows? I mean, it's hard to say. We would probably get those answers and wins, though. At least if it's going to be Sept of Baelor, we will see those answers and wins a winner. So we need a book.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to pull up. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and pull up some stuff from the Song of Ice and Fire reread subreddit. So because this is it's like a 2-part chapter. So this is, we're going to talk about the Jaime part here too, because this is something we talked probably here and there about. But so essentially it says, so Jaime tells his story to the side of Robert's rebellion, that Robert fought for pride and glory and not for love, and what was happening inside King's Landing while everyone else was fighting a war. He said, there's a line where he says, soiled my white cloak, I wore gold armor that day. In Jaime's mind, he was a Lannister that day and not a member of the Kingsguard. He had already decided what should be done, yet no one seems to remember. Since Jaime passed so much time chasing and killing pyromancers, how's come no one knew of the plan to burn King's Landing? Yeah, so nobody else seems to know that as well, even though there are pyromancers out there that would know. And you'd have to imagine that all of those caches were put there over time and everything.
An accidental blow up is not out of the question, by the way. Mm-hmm. Like Dany actually does save the day, accidentally hits these caches, blows up, has a ton of casualties. It ends up in her being,
because Tyrion has been having some produced for him, and you'd have to imagine maybe it's not all used in the Battle of the Blackwater.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man, isn't that interesting? But also, like we're assuming that Aerys was truthful about who he told about it, right? Like we always have to guess at who's lying. And also, let's take another step back. Jaime could be lying about some of this stuff. We don't know. Right. Like Jaime might have made himself look a little better than it. Wouldn't be beyond him, I don't think. I mean, we want to trust him because we want to like him at this point, especially on a reread. But who's to say Aerys didn't tell somebody else about the caches? Who knows? Maybe Varys knows about it. He has birds everywhere.
Yeah.
And Varys is going to be with an invading force coming to take King's Landing.
Yeah, maybe they blow it up and they make it seem like it was Cersei that did it. Ooh. And then, especially if you blow up the Sept of Baelor, and then it's more of like a propaganda thing.
You just nailed it.
To make it seem like, to use all that propaganda and everything against
you. Just Nailed it, though. I mean, how cool would that be? It makes the Fagon storyline even more interesting. And this is why the show not having Fagon was a
It
detriment.
was a
I
big
heard people say,
mistake.
"Oh, it doesn't really matter. He's a red herring." No, 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 no.
No.
It matters so much politically throughout the realm. It makes Dorne more relevant. I mean, I could go on and on. I'm not going to.
Sansa, if he's gonna marry, because of the
Sansa,
Targaryen, the 5
dude.
Ashford Meadow theory,
I
all of that
love what you're
stuff.
saying, though. Like, I
Yeah.
love what you're saying. And guess what that would actually kind of lead to a little bit? That would lead to us feeling having some sympathy for Cersei, which at this point in the story,
You kind of do.
yeah, you're
'Cause
at least pitying.
she's
You're
right,
pitying
she's
her a little
doing her
bit.
walk of shame and everything, and yeah.
And it's like Jamie, right? Like we need that something to get her over the edge, maybe heading towards a redemption. And maybe that's where her and Jamie split is that
And
she
maybe
failed
that's ultimately gonna be,
redemption.
the biggest wild card.
Ooh,
Because the show actually I think expanded the role of the Faith bigger than what it will be in Winds of Winter because they didn't have young Griff. So
yeah,
I think the show said, okay, well, we need to expand Cersei's storyline out, and it's going to be much heavier with the Faith than it would be since young Griff isn't coming over.
yeah,
Whereas, so maybe that is going to be that piece of the puzzle there,
man.
because the Faith is still going to have to do something in Winds of Winter. But
What?
is she gonna blow up the Sept of Baelor to?
Mhm.
Yeah,
So I like the way you said it about it being propaganda,
because I
Illyrio,
think
Varys knowing about it, blowing it up, blaming it on Cersei. It gets her out of it, right?
right
She gets
because
saved. I think you have to get Cersei out of King's Landing because I do believe Fagon takes the throne, by the way.
Because I think that I still think I think it's going to be a trial by combat, and in which she's going to choose Robert Strong, the Mountain,
Mountain.
right,
Yeah.
and the Faith is going to use
Gravedigger.
uh, the Gravedigger, which is Sandor Clegane, the Hound,
Dude.
and
Dude, all of that
so
tying into Fagon coming
do
in.
they just kill each other, right, and then you have a situation where it's kind of, well, yeah. So I don't know. I mean, that's going to be, but I feel like that's the route I would probably go is I'd have the Hound and the Mountain fight, and then you can get Clegane Bowl out of the way,
Mhm.
because I just don't see it happening the same way it did in the show, where it's
It
almost like a
it will
weird
not.
throwaway moment. It doesn't really
It won't.
matter.
It will not. It would definitely will not. And the Gravedigger being placed in a pretty good spot. You still got to get in the King's
Yeah, because
Landing. Like
Clegane
that's the
Bowl in the
thing.
show didn't matter, because
Yeah, it was
King's Landing is blowing up. Like, it literally was just a totally useless moment in the show.
it was sick, but yeah,
It was
it was kind
it
of
was
useless.
as useless as the horse that Arya rides off
The
on.
pale mare. I mean, there's some symbolism
But
there,
that it
maybe. But
yeah,
yeah.
but it's not like, well, the horse seemed like Arya was gonna go kill Daenerys, because, oh, the pale horse, and she's
No,
deaf, and
she
and
lost all
then
of her
she just
abilities to do anything after that episode. It's
yeah,
very
then it just
unfortunate.
nothing happened with it. It was literally that might to me that is literally the dumbest. Well, I don't know.
Yeah, we don't want to make that proclamation. Depends on the
Season
day,
4,
bro.
episode 4 of season 8 was, but I don't know. That might be the most useless thing in the entire show. Was the
But to your
horse.
point about like Fagon, so I'm a firm believer that Cersei will be removed from King's Landing and head back to Casterly Rock, where she will eventually have a showdown with Tyrion. And I actually think that there's a possibility that Cersei ends up taking and raising King's Landing. I have a lot of theories about this stuff, but if let's say that the wildfire caches are used as propaganda against Cersei when they blow up because of Aegon and Illyrio and Varys having these ideas or whatever, or knowledge, I'm sorry, and then Cersei is blamed, she's outed, but she escapes over to Casterly Rock. That puts her in a good position to be in Casterly Rock. If Aegon gets on the throne, Dany arrives, there's a usurper on the throne now. Like it really does play into a lot of the things that have been like hinted at. So I like your theory. I think that that's kind of cool. I just wonder what happens with Cersei after that. But my big theory has always been that Tyrion will burn Casterly Rock, but I've also had this idea that like as they fight the others in the north and they're coming back, that when they arrive back to King's Landing, Cersei has come back and has like raised King's Landing, and they have the final fight there. And but everyone's dead. Like I've always thought that would be interesting because Cersei would then become like a Sauron type character from
Right.
Lord of the Rings because he raises the Shire at the end of the books. Like we get back from our journey and the Shire's gone.
Yeah.
It's like holy shit, that's crazy, right? I've
Yeah.
always thought that George would kind of pay homage to that because I know that's one of his favorite parts of Lord of the Rings. Uh, So I wonder how he could do something like that. But maybe Winterfell being raised, halfway through the series is the raising of the Shire moment. Maybe that's kind of what George's homage is. I'm not really sure, but I've always believed that Cersei will be outed and then wind up at Castle Rock. Tyrion has had dreams of burning Castle Rock. We have the Valonqar prophecy. Like, there's a lot of things that could line up there too. I mean, it's fascinating stuff. I still believe Tyrion rides a dragon at some point in the series because he had dragon dreams. Like, I don't think he's a secret Targaryen. But somehow I think he rides a dragon, and I think he burns Castle Rock.
Yeah. Well, there's the stone dragon that needs to awaken too.
There's a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to go down a rabbit hole real quick?
Sure.
Do you think? Obviously, this is in the book. This is more conversation and context around the Mad King and his mindset going into why he did these things, what he did. Are you a believer that Bran, as a three-eyed raven, interacting with the timeline made Ares go mad, or do you think that that's me?
I don't know.
I'm back and forth.
I don't know. You know, I will say one of my early thoughts of season 8 was the moment where Daenerys tells Jon, when she says, "Do not tell anyone about this," right? So I kind of thought, and then of course we got everything, the whole Night King thing ended the next episode, so it kind of ruined all of those things for me. But I kind of thought, I was like, this might be, if they wanted to do a Bran going back in time thing, like this could be the moment that they go back to, and like Bran like switches, where Jon doesn't tell anyone, and then it goes in a different direction. But I kind of thought, because like then Jon told them, and I was like, ooh, that could be like the Night King's walking up, which we did see in the next episode or whatever. And then it's like, this is the moment I have. Because I thought that was maybe the way the Bran thing was going to go. When we saw the Night King walking up, I was like, oh, he might just like, nope, and go back in time and like, like, all right, this is kind of like X-Men Days of Future Past is the way they kind of do that.
Right.
Where they're constantly like going back in time, like a couple weeks or whatever, to keep like chasing, because they're being chased by the Sentinels and everything. And I kind of thought maybe that would be the route that they went, is that Bran would go back in time just like a little bit, or influence the past, or sort of like, and I thought that would be that moment. So I wouldn't put that out of the realm of possibilities that Bran has to go back and do something like that. We'll have to see. The whole seeing Hodor in the show really solidifies all of the Bran as possibly going to go back in time travel, type of a anything. I mean, to go back and go do anything. It's certainly there. I don't know if George is going to go that route. I don't know if that he needs it in the books.
It opens up a huge can of worms when you open up timeline stuff. But as a sci-fi writer, I think George, one, could handle it, and two, is going to do it. Actually,
yeah. It's just yeah. Does he go back and do it because having Aerys set up all the wildfire everywhere is the thing that
saves humanity?
That saves humanity, right?
Dude,
it's like it kicks off this war and all of these things.
So sick.
But if it is, perhaps the fact that Aerys put wildfire everywhere was the thing that caused, and then hey, if Jaime's decision here might be the, because if Aerys blows everything up, then there's not enough wildfire for when the White Walkers come. Yeah, it's kind of
this could, and I know some people saying
if it's pulled off correctly, it could be like,
it could be excellent,
the most epic thing ever.
It's also very reminiscent of some stuff I've read from Gene Wolfe, who's a legend in sci-fi fantasy, and George idolized him in many ways and paid great respects to Gene Wolfe. There's actually a Book of the New Sun references in A Song of Ice and Fire, but very Wolfian, I would say. So do not count it out. I think that this is certainly in the realm of possibility that the series could go this way, and George could do it. I mean, he's written so much good sci-fi, and I think is inspired by great people. So I love that, dude. I love that idea.
Yeah, you just have to pull it off. It's a lot. I mean, it is
a lot. I mean, these books are not easy to read.
Is that the plan the whole time? I mean, so yeah, it's a lot to pull off, which is probably why it's taken him so freaking long. And
just throwing in also all the subplots and world building and right. There's so much.
Okay, let's move on to a few other points here. So, it says the king reminded Lewin Martell graciously that he held Elia and sent him to take command out of the 10,000 Dornishmen coming up the King's Road. So the comment here in this on the subreddit on this sort of response to this chapter is, I guess that means Jaime knows that Dorne has a low population in case of an upcoming war.
Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that he's like, well, I'm going to take Elia. I'm going to hold her here and not send her out. Is like that is something I think that gets overlooked a lot, is the relationship between Aerys and Rhaegar
Oh yeah.
during this whole thing. And
Yeah.
I really hope we get it. George says he's not going to include any more POV characters, but God, I've always hoped we get like a Harrenhal. I've always hoped I always hoped we would get a Harrenhal chapter.
Oh, well, we probably will through Bran's perspective. So it's not a
Yeah.
new POV. It's just Bran kind of orating this event.
I guess I just always wanted
totally
a
valid.
Rhaegar chapter.
Yeah, now you might see it through the eyes of Vagar, through the eyes of Bran, which would be a really cool way of writing. But I think a Harrenhal chapter is 100% in the cards. Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing I thought we would get in season 8.
We're also
But
going to get the Tourney of Harrenhal on Broadway soon. So
that's gonna, yeah,
he said it'll have answers. He did say that.
well, there we go. I'm
We'll
down
be
for
there.
it. Yeah, we're totally going. So, and then a little bit here too. It says, and Prince Rhaegar returned from the south and persuaded his father to swallow his pride and summon my father, which Jaime's saying that, which is Lord Tywin. So yeah, I mean, Rhaegar comes back and says, we need Tywin Lannister. Oof, that's
Let's not
like
forget
this.
Pycelle is also convincing him to open the gates. Like
Mhm.
all this ties in so much to the story that we're reading. It's so cool.
Yeah. So, and then the comment here is, and what could Jaime actually know about Lyanna? Since 3 of the men of the King's Guard were at the Tower of Joy, they probably knew about a child if there is one. Could Jaime know too? Because
I
Jaime
don't think
talks about you're also supposed to know their secrets.
Well, he might know that there's something, and maybe he could guess, but I don't think. I don't know.
That is one of the things, is the Jaime Rhaegar relationship. Like, there's only like brief little tiny mentions here and there.
Cersei liked him, and he didn't like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He was not a fan of Rhaegar.
Yeah. That's who she should have been married to.
It would have probably worked out better for her in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it would have worked out better for everybody
Yeah, honestly,
in the
I
long
would have
run.
been fine. We wouldn't
Well,
need it.
except maybe, once he still reads some book and finds out that Song of Ice and Fire, and there's a,
It was eventually going to collapse, huh?
yeah,
Prophecy always leads to bad things.
totally. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, there's some other things here. Varys always seems to give Aerys fine advice, pointing traitors, not opening the gates, which is weird. Why he was pardoned and remained master of whispers. On the other side, Pycelle did help quickening King's Landing fall, seemingly helping the Lannisters.
I think Varys staying as a whisperer is simply because he's so damn good at his job and has so much information that it would actually be a detriment to lose him, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, and then he's plotting against, essentially behind Robert's back. Right? Hey,
Varys has a whole nother thing going on. And again, in the books, far deeper, far more important than what it ended up being in the show, obviously.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to talk about in sort of the Jaime portion of this before we move on to essentially another chapter, which is the second part of this, which is
no,
all this stuff.
No, this is kind of what I wanted to go into. I mean, I think this is our final, like, hey, the red wedding's about to happen. You guys should have predicted it by now moment.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, so this is a huge chapter. It's sort of in 2 parts here. So now we move on to the other part, which is essentially, right, the Roose Bolton marrying a Frey thing moment, which is another indication that things are weird with them. Arya is going to be found soon.
Yeah, Arya's found. What is this?
Yeah, which is interesting because we just had an Arya chapter, a little bit ago. So you're, as the reader, thinking first time like, oh, they found Arya out there,
and
which is funny because Arya was Roose Bolton's cupbearer, and he didn't know it was her.
Yes, and also we were both, as readers, we're sitting there thinking that doesn't sound quite right.
Right. Yeah, because he was her cupbearer. And didn't realize it. Do you like it more in the show, or do you like it more that it's Roose Bolton, or do you like it more that it's Tywin in the show?
You mean like the Harrenhal thing?
The Harrenhal, Arya, cupbearer stuff.
I think it is better with Tywin. I think that was a good change.
I do
Yeah.
too. I think
Yeah,
I
I think
liked
it's
it.
better.
It certainly felt more. Is it because he in the show with it being Tywin, it feels more dangerous, whereas in the books you're kind of like, when you're reading, you're like, yeah, but Roose Bolton's sworn to House Stark, so it's like something weird's going on here, and so he's more so sort of pushing towards the Red Wedding, whereas with Tywin in the show, they're more pushing to the idea like, ooh, this is dangerous, and it sort of makes Jack and Hagar feel much more important to Arya.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of those things that the show changes that's interesting to me, that kind of works both ways.
Yeah, it's not like Roose was a bad pick because it was the original pick for a reason, right?
Mhm.
And then Tywin being there adds a whole another level. Also, just makes Tywin a more interesting character, right?
For
Because
sure.
like we kind of like the way Tywin treats Arya. We're like, man, he's kind of fair in some ways.
Yeah, it gives you it makes you not feel as bad about Tywin, which is
Yeah, and Charles Dance is just the man, right? So him being on screen more is never a bad thing. Not that the Roose Bolton actor isn't good; he's great as well.
Yeah. So okay, so now we have Roose Bolton marrying a Frey, and but we don't. At this point in time, you don't know that the Freys are like totally terrible. You're kind of like, oh, that could be a good thing.
I think, I mean, first time read, second read,
Yeah, second time read, it's bad, but the first time,
it's bad. This is your final warning. This is like there's a new Northern Alliance essentially, and the powers are about to switch. I mean, it's very obvious, painfully so, because we know what happens next. So.
Yeah, exactly. So Roose Bolton shrugged. Arya Stark was lost for a time, it was true, but now she has been found. I mean to see her returned safely to the north. Because right now, you also think, if you're reading this for the first time, that, like they're still going to be, making a deal with Jaime. Like Jaime is still a piece of this puzzle, not, oh, hey, actually, I'm secretly working with the Lannisters.
And obviously, Brienne is not a part of this deal and is going to be offered up almost as like a sacrifice to Vargo Hoat. And that's an indicator that Catelyn Stark is out of the game completely. Like the Starks are not being considered in any facet. Like we do not need to make sure we're doing right by the Starks. There will be no retaliation because we're literally going to bury their house.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Which is crazy. Because you're like, oh, Rob's been winning these wars and everything, but you can see, and it is a thread that when you look at like the Catelyn chapters, is slowly the Starks are losing control, and all of the things that happen to the Starks losing control actually happen outside of their chapters, which is crazy. You know what I mean? It's weird. Like and then you get back to their chapters and you just see them sort of struggling, but they still kind of seem to be somewhat in command of everything. But you can kind of see all of the pieces around it. Yeah, just kind of slowly closing, and this is definitely wondering. And then Jaime has this exchange. He says, of course, there is Lord Karstock's offer to consider as well. He promises the hand of his daughter to the man who brings him your head. Leave it to your goat to get it backwards, says Jaime.
Also, there was a goat in House of the Dragon this year. Let's not forget.
Yep.
That's a little Easter egg.
Yeah. So, they talked a little about the curse of Harren the Black, the curse of Tywin Lannister. Bolton held out his goblet, and Elmar refilled it silently. Our goat should have considered the Tarbexer reigns. They might have warned him how your Lord Father deals with betrayal. There are no Tarbexer reigns, said Jaime. My point precisely. Lord Vargo doubtlessly hoped that Lord Stannis would triumph at King's Landing and thence confirm him in his possession of this castle in gratitude for his small part in the downfall of House Lannister. He gave a dry chuckle. He knows little of Stannis Baratheon either, I fear. That one might have given him Harrenhal for his service, but he would have given him a noose for his crimes as well. A noose is kinder than what he'll get from my father. By now he has come to the same realization. With Stannis broken and Renly dead, only a Stark victory can save him from Lord Tywin's vengeance, but the chances of that grow perishly slim. Yeah, and this is like Jaime and Roose Bolton talking.
Yeah.
So even Jaime at this moment, thinks, ooh, It's not looking great for the Starks.
Yeah, and he's also been around court, right? Like he's just like Tyrion. He might not be as like outwardly cunning. I think it's from a more nihilistic, apathetic standpoint, and he's very disenfranchised with people in general. So I just don't think he cares. But like Jaime knows the winds have changed at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can see. I mean, you can sort of keep going here. Then Bran says King Robb has won every battle while losing the phrase Karstarks, Winterfell, and the North. A pity the wolf is so young. Boys of 16 always believe they are immortal and invincible. An older man would bend the knee, I'd think. After a war, there is always peace, and with peace, there is always pardons for the Robb Starks. For the Robb Starks, at least, not for the likes of Vargo Hope. Bolton gave him a small smile. Both sides have made use of him, but neither will shed a tear at his passing. The brave companions did not fight in the Battle of the Blackwater, and yet they died all the same. You'll forgive me if I do not mourn. You have no pity for a wretched doomed goat, but the gods must, else why deliver you into his hands? Bolton chewed another chunk of meat. Carhold is smaller and meaner than Harrenhal, but it lies well beyond the reach of the lion's claws. Once wed to Alice Karstark, Hope might be a lord in truth. If he could collect some gold from your father, so much the better. But he would have delivered you to Lord Rickard, no matter how much Lord Tywin paid. His price would be the maid and said refuge. But to sell you, he must keep you, and the Riverlands are full of those who would gladly steal you away. Glover and Tallhard were broken at Duskendale, but remember, but remnants of their host are still abroad. With the mountains slaughtering the stragglers, 1,000 Karstarks prowl the land south and east of Riverrun, hunting you. Elsewhere are dairymen left lordless and lawless, packs of 4-footed wolves, and the Lightning Lord's outlaw bands. Dondarrion would gladly hang you and the goat together from the same tree. The Lord of the Dreadfort sopped up some of the blood with a chunk of bread. Harrenhal was the only place Lord Vargo could hope to hold you safe, but here his brave companions are much outnumbered by my own men and Sir Aenys and his frays. No doubt he feared I might return you to Sir Edmure of Riverrun, or worse, send you to your father. Yeah, but by maiming you, he meant to remove your sword as a threat, gain himself grisly token, and send your father and diminishing your value from me. For he is my man, and I am King Robb's man. Thus, his crime is mine, or may seem so in your father's eye. And therein lies my small difficulty. He glazed at Jaime, his pale eyes unblinking. You want me to absolve you of blame, to tell my father this stump is no work of yours. Jaime laughed. My lord, send me to Cersei, and I'll sing a sweetest song as you want. Any other answer he knew, and Bolton would give him back to the goat. So right here you have Roose Bolton.
Vampire symbolism.
A lot of vampire symbolism, right? Who says that I'm King Robb's man, even though they're talking about King Robb is sort of losing, right? Yeah. And Roose Bolton, I think, for his house, I think Roose Bolton is, even though we're Stark, we want to root for the Starks and everything. I think Roose Bolton makes the right decision. Because
he's about to be gifted Winterfell in the north. I mean, he's going to be Lord Paramount. I mean, it's a huge win for him.
Well, not only that, but I mean, he's looking at the winds and which way they're blowing, and he's like, Robb Stark's lost Winterfell. He's betrayed the phrase. The Karstarks aren't with him. Everyone out here is searching for Jaime Lannister,
and here you are.
So he's got all the pieces, and he's like, well, I get to make the chess move that nobody else gets to make.
And Robb is not bending the knee. Roose is willing to make peace, which is what they want. So Roose is taking the more kingly, more appropriate decisions, which puts him in a better light. I mean, it all makes sense. Also, let's not forget, Catelyn tried to get Robb to bend the knee in the last Catelyn tribe chapter, and he refused. And here we are again. Everyone's like, man, just bend the knee, dude. Like, it'll be fine. Like, you're protected. And, but hey, to be fair to Robb, his father bent the knee and told a lie to save his life and then still got his head lopped off. So, like, I don't necessarily, like, things have changed in Westeros. The rules of the game have changed, and they're going to change again at the Red Wedding whenever they break the sacred oath of being underneath someone's house breaking bread. So maybe Robb actually has a point in not bending the knee.
Yeah. I don't think Robb can't bend the knee because he has nothing to go back to.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, Robb is totally screwed. There's nothing that Robb could do at this point Like it's, I mean, it's over. I mean, the only thing
Take the black, I guess, is like it.
I mean, he could try. He could, if he goes back to Winterfell at this point, unless he can go back to Winterfell, rally the troops, which are already pretty like upset and dispersed and all over the place.
Yeah, it's over for him. Like there
Yeah.
are no moves to get out because everything's been set. Like he could never get the phrase back. The Boltons want the power. They're giving the Lannisters what they want. Like it actually at this point, Rob's dead. He's actually already dead.
Yeah. He really has. There's really nothing he can do at this point. I mean, at best, he could go back and take Winterfell and retake Winterfell, because really, like, Theon and the Greyjoys don't really want Winterfell because it's too far inland and all these things. He doesn't really know that. So if he goes back to Winterfell and takes it, he's just hiding out until Joffrey would send an army to say, yeah, it's game over now. Like, come out or we're burning. Yeah. So Rob's totally screwed at this point. Yeah.
Ominous chapter.
It is. And next is a Tyrion chapter.
Oh yes.
Let's go. They do end with a little Tyrion talk here about him being married to Sansa. And talking about the only thing that could part them is the gods.
Yeah. We'll see about that.
Yep.